12,000 years ago, long before the wheel, long before writing, and before a single brick was ever laid in Egypt or Sumer. Someone carved a massive 20-foot-tall stone giant and buried it under the earth on purpose. Think about that for a second. It was not destroyed by war. It was not lost to time. It was buried deliberately and carefully by human hands that had no cities, no farms, and no metal tools. Now, why would a Stone Age group of hunters build a monument far more advanced than anything the world would see for another 6,000 years, and then choose to hide it forever? What were they so afraid of, or what secret were they trying to protect? When I first stumbled across this story, it honestly blew my mind. Scientists call this place Göbekli Tepe, and it has quietly shattered everything we thought we knew about the origin of human civilization. Because as it turns out, the history we were taught in school might be completely backwards. If mysteries like this make you stop and question everything you know about our past, trust me, you are in the right place. Welcome, and let us dive right in. For over 100 years, archaeologists told us a very simple story. They believed that humans first settled down, started farming, and only after they had plenty of food did they begin building temples, worshiping gods, and creating complex societies. Farming first, religion second, civilization last. It sounded logical, right? But in 1994, a local shepherd stumbled across something in the dusty hills near the Turkish-Syrian border that did not just challenge that old theory, it completely shattered it. Because what was uncovered there predates the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000 years. It is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It even predates the invention of pottery, the wheel, and the written word itself. Think about how crazy that sounds for a moment. This was not just another old ruins site. This was living proof that organized religion, massive architectural monuments, and large-scale teamwork all began before agriculture, before permanent villages, before anything we thought primitive hunter-gatherers were capable of doing. Honestly, when you pause to reflect on this, it changes everything. And if this discovery is truly what it appears to be, then every history textbook ever written about the dawn of humanity is fundamentally wrong. The site sits on a barren limestone ridge, nearly 900 feet above the surrounding plain, in what is now southeastern Turkey. For generations, local villagers walked right past it without a second thought. Local farmers even complained that their plows kept striking large, annoying stones buried just beneath the dirt. They kept clearing those stones away, one by one, never realizing what was actually waiting underneath. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt first set eyes on this hill in 1994, he immediately felt something extraordinary was buried there. And within just a few hours, he knew he was standing on top of one of the most important sites in human history. What emerged from the dirt was not a simple village or a small collection of stone tools. It was a massive series of stone circles, lined with giant T-shaped pillars, some of them weighing over 10 tons. 10 tons. Picture this in your head for a second. These massive monoliths were carved, moved, and lifted upright by people who, according to every traditional model we had, simply should not have possessed the social structure to do it. There was no wheel back then. No draft animals to pull heavy loads. No metal chisels, just crude stone tools, thick rope, wooden beams, and an unbelievable effort from thousands of human hands working toward a single goal. Honestly, when you try to visualize that, it gives you goosebumps. And the carvings on those massive pillars were not rough or basic either. They were surprisingly detailed. Sculptures of foxes mid-stride, boars showing their sharp tusks, vultures with wide wings, and strange abstract symbols that no expert has ever fully deciphered. Even stranger, some pillars have human-like arms carved directly into their sides, with hands folded gently right above where a belt would be. These were not just standing stones, they were carved figures, silent guardians. And the disturbing question that has haunted researchers for the last 30 years is very simple. Who or what were these figures meant to represent? As excavation continued, the ancient enclosures grew even stranger. Radiocarbon dating placed the oldest layers at nearly 9600 BCE, which means this site was already ancient before the last ice age had even fully ended. This was a world still recovering from melting glaciers. And yet somehow, in that harsh, unstable environment, human beings organized themselves enough to move stones the weight of a heavy school bus. But the real truth was far darker than a simple monument. Because as archaeologists dug deeper, they found something that did not fit any peaceful theory of ancient worship. Human bones, but not buried the way you would expect. Skull fragments, deliberately carved with deep grooves and drilled with small holes, as if meant to be strung up and displayed on ropes. A skull cult. That is the unsettling term researchers now use to describe it. Evidence suggests these people may have removed, decorated, and displayed the skulls of their dead, possibly ancestors, possibly enemies, or possibly something else entirely. And then came the twist that changed everything. For years, scientists assumed Göbekli Tepe was built by a settled farming community as proof of early agricultural religion. But newer evidence tells a completely different story. The people who built this site were not farmers at all. They were hunter-gatherers, nomadic, mobile, with no fixed homes, no domesticated crops, and no permanent villages nearby. Which means the old theory that farming leads to religion and religion leads to civilization may be completely backwards. What if it was not farming that built the first temples, but building the first temples that led to farming? Because to feed the thousands of workers required to build and maintain this site, something extraordinary had to happen nearby. And it did. Just a few miles from Göbekli Tepe, on the slopes of Karahan, genetic studies traced the wild ancestor of nearly all modern domesticated wheat to that exact region. This means the very birthplace of agriculture, the single event that fed human empires for 10,000 years, happened right in the shadow of a temple that predates farming itself. Coincidence? Most researchers do not think so. The leading theory now is chilling in its implications. That religion, ritual, and the deep human need to gather and worship came first, and farming was invented simply to feed the massive crowds that these rituals demanded. Animal bone analysis strongly backs this up. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of massive feasts, where hundreds of gazelles and wild cattle were slaughtered and consumed in single events. This was not daily survival eating. This was ceremony, gathering, and celebration on a scale that required serious planning. But here is what truly disturbs researchers. Around 8000 BCE, after nearly 2,000 years of continuous use, the people of Göbekli Tepe did something almost incomprehensible. They buried it, not through neglect, and not through structural collapse. Deliberately and completely, they filled the massive enclosures with tons of rubble, soil, and debris, sealing every single pillar beneath the earth, as though performing a final funeral for the temple itself. Why would an ancient civilization erase their own greatest achievement? Some researchers believe it was a ritual closure, a sacred decommissioning once the structure's spiritual purpose was fulfilled. Others suggest something far more unsettling, a deliberate act of forgetting, meant to bury not just stone, but a belief system too dangerous or too painful to remain visible. We may never know which theory is true, and that is the terrifying part. Because for 11,000 years, this secret stayed buried, perfectly preserved, waiting until a farmer's plow struck stone in a barren field. And here is the revelation that connects it all back to where we began. Göbekli Tepe proves that the deepest human instinct, the drive to gather, to build something greater than ourselves, and to reach toward the unknown, did not come after civilization. It created civilization. Before the first seed was ever planted, and before the first city wall was raised. Humanity's very first act was to build a temple to something it could not explain. Today, less than 10% of Göbekli Tepe has even been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar suggests that at least 20 more massive stone circles remain buried and untouched, exactly as they were left over 10,000 years ago. Which means the biggest secrets of this ancient world may still be waiting silently, right beneath our feet. What were these people truly worshiping? Why did they choose this specific hill, in this harsh, wind-battered corner of the world? And what did they know that made them deliberately bury their own greatest achievement, rather than let it be forgotten by time alone? We may not have those answers yet, but maybe that is the entire point. Because 11,000 years ago, in a world without writing, without cities, and without a single metal tool we would recognize today, humanity looked directly at the unknown, and instead of running from it, they built something to stand against it forever. And somewhere beneath that quiet, dusty hill in Turkey, it is still waiting for us to understand. But in the next documentary, we uncover the part that almost nobody talks about. The strange, forgotten sister site found just a few miles away, that researchers have kept almost entirely out of the public eye.